The Green Room, a weekly look at the arts in Houston. Your host, Jim Bernhard.
Good evening, and welcome to The Green Room. This evening, we're going to focus on the Rothko Chapel, the internationally known interdenominational spiritual center located here in Houston. It's also the home of 14 monumental paintings by the late American artist Mark Rothko. Our guests on the program this evening are Dominique de Menil, internationally known arts patron, and I think it's fair to say the creator of the concept of the Rothko Chapel. And with her is Nabila Druby, who together with Mrs. de Menil has been quite involved in celebrating the reopening of the Rothko Chapel by the arrangement of a special ritual performance by the Whirling Dervishes of Konya, Turkey. Welcome to the Green Room. Mrs. de Menil, could you tell us a little bit first about your original concept of the Rothko Chapel and how it came about?
Well, you see, the strange thing is there was no original concept. It's something that grew. The chapel gradually formed its own, developed along certain lines that were not anticipated before. And I believe that very much that it has a life of its own.
What do you see as its purpose now in the community here in
Well,
Houston?
we've tried to keep our ears and our mind and our heart open. And we've been very struck how it was adopted by mostly, first of all, young people who in this city practice meditation and come there. They've adopted it instantaneously. Some spend an hour, some even more. Some make a practice to come there every week, some every month. So this already has given a certain characteristic. Of course, my husband and I, when we started, we always had in mind of a center that would bring people together, people not only of all faiths, but people of goodwill, because we don't, at the Rothko Chapel, limit ourselves to people of faith. We include also people of no faith, or who believe themselves of no faith, because once you listen to your conscience, once you are aware that there are other people in the world, and you sort of want to think about them and want to do something for them, to us, those people are just also very spiritual, and they are to us obeying what God has asked all of us to do.
Is there a regular program of worship services at the chapel for various faiths?
We've had, for a certain period of time, a regular program. We've tried that. We had for 10 consecutive weeks what we call time of prayer, when every Sunday at 5 o'clock, one denomination came, said the prayer, but it was understood that everybody was invited, and actually many people of many faiths came. And so we had the Muslim, we had the Hindus, we had the Orthodox, we had Copts, we had Catholics, we had Jews, where everybody was represented. We had Buddhists too.
Is the chapel open every day to an individual who wishes to come and meditate?
It's open absolutely every day from 10 to 6.
We have some film footage of the chapel and the approach to it featuring the broken obelisk sculpture by Barnett Newman. If we could take a look at the chapel now, we can also see inside some of the paintings by Rothko which hang there. And if you'd be kind enough to give us a little guided tour as we go, we'll see what we're looking at.
I'll be happy, but Rothko talked very little of what he was doing, so it's a little bit guesswork.
Now here we have the broken obelisk, do we not, which is dedicated to the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King,
Yes,
I believe.
indeed. And here I was happy to be able to have some statement by Barnett Newman himself. He explained to me that, it's the aspiration of man.
The chapel itself is the work of the architect Philip Johnson, I believe.
Yes, but it is really, the shape has a lot to do with the painter, Mark Rothko. He, I think, was very anxious to have this octagonal shape. And of course, he worked it out with the architect, who at that time was Philip Johnson.
Now, these are some of the paintings. There are 14 different works housed within the octagonal shape
That's
of
right.
the chapel.
That's right. And the colors are a little bit different from what is on the screen. This is what we call at the entrance. It's what appears as purple is actually black. And I think Roscoe had in mind to give something very dramatic at the entrance and to oppose it to what is right in the opposite direction is the center panel of the triptych, which is it's in the apse, and there, on the contrary, it was supposed to be more luminous, and we can see here that the color in the central panel is more intense. So it was to be like a lift, like he had experienced that kind of lift in the Byzantine churches when he went over to Italy, Torcello, and he sort of tried to recapture that feeling.
Is there a general theme to the works, a statement made by Rothko?
No, he talked very little about it, but we know somehow he expressed himself beautifully when he wanted to express himself, but he never really put any particular specific meaning.
Do they evoke any meaning from you or from other viewers of the painting?
I think that everybody will finally come up with what it corresponds to themselves. I believe very much that there is always a personal relationship between someone who observes a work of art and the work of art.
Yes.
So here I would have an interpretation, and I've tried to put it down in writing, that interpretation, but I don't think it's the only interpretation. To me, the chapel is like a sort of pre-dawn atmosphere. It's the paintings are all sort of very dark, and though it appears red, it's actually a sort of pinkish purple, which is the central panel, which evokes a sort of pre-dawn atmosphere.
Well, there we have seen the paintings in the Rothko Chapel, but actually the chapel has been closed for the past several months for a very special reason.
Indeed.
Why?
Well, I tell you, when we first opened the chapel in 1971, everybody jumped on us in the art world. All the critics and the art historians and they said the lighting was absolutely terrible. And indeed it was, but we lived with it. And, you know, one can live with an infirmity and finally forget that you have this infirmity. We were sort of limping.
There were some modifications made along the way, weren't there?
We tried several things, yes. And we sort of screened off some of the light. There was too much light right in the middle, and everybody had always to put their hands above there to shelter their eyes in order to be able to look at the paintings. So finally, you know, after consultation with lots of people, and after building a reduced model, we built behind the chapel in a kind of barn, a reduction of the chapel.
What scale was it to the original?
Half
half the size of the original
yes,
chapel.
Which means 1/4 of the surface.
Yes.
Half the measures, and it meant one, yes.
And what was determined to be the solution to the lighting problem?
Well, finally, it was Jean Aubry who found the solution, is keeping some light in the middle, but reflecting enough light on the walls.
We have a photograph taken at the scale model, which shows the mock-up and the new baffle which has been designed.
Let's look at it.
If we could take a look at that for a moment, perhaps you can explain to us what we're seeing.
Well, there it is. Well, you see, it's like a big umbrella that would have a hole in the middle. So some light goes through the hole, and some light is reverberated against and washes the wall. Before, we had no light on the walls.
And how long did it take to build this new ceiling structure?
Well, we've been experimenting about 2 years
Oh,
on
my
that.
goodness.
You know, it's a terrible risk, and I was frightened. So we tried several things. Actually, we tried many devices and formula until finally this came up. And after consulting with several people, we felt pretty confident that we should go ahead.
And you're ready now to celebrate the reopening of the chapel
With
this month.
the Whirling Dervishes.
You have a very
Yes.
special event coming up.
Yes.
Why the Whirling Dervishes of Turkey?
Well, because it's the dervishes called the Mevlevi, that brand of dervishes, are very spiritual people. And we feel, Nabila Droubi and I, we worked very close together, that the chapel should every year, you know, bring another spiritual group. So we are starting with the dervishes from Turkey, but another year we might bring the Hasidic group or just some Catholic group or some Protestant group or maybe Orthodox, something very special, not only of the various faiths, but also of the non-believers, because
Yes.
we are very keen of letting everybody feel that the chapel is theirs and that they are not only can come but welcome.
Truly ecumenical then.
Truly ecumenical. I believe myself that spiritual people are not always the people who think they are the most.
There have been some other
Yes.
religious thinkers who thought that as well, I
It's
think.
people who are really have a conscience and listen to their conscience. That tells them that there are other people in the world than themselves.
Yes. Mrs. Droubi, can you perhaps tell us something specific about what the week of the Whirling Dervishes will consist of?
Well, the Whirling Dervishes are a mystical group of Islam. They're Sufis. They are an order.
And what is a Sufi? Could you explain that word for us,
A
please?
Sufi is a mystic, a man who or a woman who is doing his own spiritual seeking within the Islamic tradition. And you would have them, some of them are dervishes, some of them are just people who neither whirl nor howl, as the whirling dervishes and the howling dervishes are known in the States. But to be a dervish is a person who is detached from material things, yet seeks earning his living and leads a very normal life within the society.
Is there a special meaning to the word dervish itself?
Yes, it used to mean a beggar or a person who travels along seeking experiences with other people in the world who are also interested in spiritual life. And there are many of these in the East, much more than here. But I think there are this type of people have developed also in the States, and you see many youngsters roaming around trying to make contacts with other people who have the same seeking.
In a few moments, we're going to see some actual footage of this fascinating ceremony of the whirling dance. In the meanwhile, tell us what they're going to do in Houston starting the week of October 15th. I think you have a special benefit performance for the chapel planned.
We have a special benefit for the chapel, and we have many other performances organized for our Houstonian friends, and we want them to see this unique performance, which is a spiritual experience, which is an artistic experience. And I think that the chapel is a wonderful setting because it is very much like their what they call their semahana, the place where they originally performed those dances.
How large is the group that will be performing here?
There are 21 people coming, but 19 will be performing. And
Those are musicians and dancers.
there are 9 musicians and 7 dancers and a sheikh, which is the spiritual leader who leads the ceremony, actually.
Now, you and Mrs. Demenil have had several trips back and forth between here and Turkey to make the arrangements for this tour. Tell us about some of the difficulties that you had in setting it up.
Well, you see, I think the major difficulty was how to approach them, because it's difficult. They see themselves as spiritual people, and we see them and we've invited them as spiritual people. Yet the government has banned them for political reasons some 25 years ago, and now they are welcoming them back to perform. But they're allowed to perform only once a year, between the 7th and the 17th of December, to celebrate the anniversary of their founder, Jalaluddin Rumi. So people haven't seen them. Few people have seen them. And when we approached them, we didn't know how to go about it. We didn't know whether we could just say we're coming to invite them to the chapel to perform a spiritual ritual, or we should approach them and say we're inviting them to come and be folk dancers. So that was a very delicate situation to maneuver between the dervishes and between the government. We have the benediction of the Ministry of Tourism, and this is how they'll be allowed to come. And we have their approval because they know that they will be in a spiritual setting at the chapel.
Are there any tickets available to the public for this week of performance?
Very, very few, I should say. We're practically sold out.
Marvelous.
There are, I said very few because we think that there might be a few people who have reserved seats and wouldn't be able to come.
There is a special performance, I believe, for students on the 22nd, a Sunday afternoon at the University of Houston.
Yes,
and that is on a first-come, first-served basis,
that's
I think.
right.
So perhaps students who might like to come should take note of that special performance. Let's take a look now, if we may, at some special film footage of the dervishes. It's been edited by Daniel Jersik, and we are indebted to Kenneth and Elizabeth Fransheim for making the film possible. It was filmed in Turkey, The Whirling Dervishes.
Throughout Turkey, the ezan, or call to prayer, is chanted 5 times a day in Arabic. God is most great. There is but one God. Muhammad is the prophet of God.
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله.
These are dervishes, the mystics of the Islamic religion. The Quran is full of poetic expressions. God is the light of the heavens and earth. Light upon light, God guides to his light who he will. The Turkish Empire was established in Konya in the 11th century. And by the 13th century, a poet and mystic called Jalaluddin Rumi had made Konya the most culturally famous city in West Asia. His poetry is filled with spiritual experience expressed in simple terms. Higher than the highest, O beautiful God, no one can conceive what you are like. We explore the sky to drag you down to earth, while you stay housed in believing souls. This mosque was the center for Rumi's teaching in mysticism. As a boy, Rumi left his home in Balkh in Afghanistan to accompany his parents on a long and perilous caravan journey which ended in Konya, where he was destined to establish the Mevlevi order of the dervishes. And it is here that today the devotees celebrate with the ecstatic dance he created. Here, all men are equal in God's eye, as each pays homage to his fellow man, regardless of age or position. Kings lick the earth with which the fair are made, for God has mingled in the dusty earth a measure of beauty from his choicest cup. It is that, fond lover, not those lips of clay you are kissing with 100 ecstasies. The sema, or revolving movement, is said to signify the motion of the sun, moon, and stars. And through this movement, the dervishes gently attain a state of religious ecstasy. But in order to achieve this, the formal ritual must be followed. For example, the skirts must not flow outwards in a circular pattern, they must take on a triangular shape. The dancers must revolve in an anti-clockwise direction, turning on the left heel while gathering motion with the right foot. The dervishes rotate with widespread arms, the right hand open to the sky in a gesture of receiving, while the left hand faces downward towards the earth, as if giving. Their smooth, steady, floating movement may look simple, but it takes years of practice for a novice to learn how to whirl correctly without colliding or falling over from dizziness. Our speech and action is the outer voyage. Our inner journey is above the sky. The body roams on its dusty path. The spirit walks like Jesus on the sea. This art of revolving enables the dancer to contemplate, and through contemplation achieve a religious experience where he attains a oneness with God.
Fascinating look at the whirling dervishes of Turkey, who will be appearing in Houston during the week of October 15th in special ceremonies celebrating the reopening of the Rothko Chapel. Thereafter, the dervishes will be touring Austin, New York, and Washington under the auspices and sponsorship of the Rothko Chapel. Our thanks to Dominique de Menil and Nabila Druby for sharing this marvelous experience with us this evening on The Green Room. And now it's time for our special feature, The Critics' Chair. And in the Critics' Chair this week is Ellsworth Milburn of the Music Faculty of Rice University, who has been to a special mixed media concert at Miller Theater. And now, here's Mr. Milburn's report.
Friday and Saturday, Some Concerts produced another in its series of multimedia contemporary music festivals, and this one was far and away the best of the three I've seen. The concert opened with 8 Songs for a Mad King by Peter Maxwell Davies, performed by David Pelton and the Syzygy Ensemble from the Shepherd School of Music. The work is a bizarre piece of theater which explores both humorously and tragically the peculiar madness of George III, and Mr. Pelton performed superbly. Ivar Mikashev followed this with a performance of George Crumb's Macrocosmos Volume 2 for piano, danced by Farrell Dide's Theater Dance Unlimited. However, this was not just another piano ballet. Crumb's haunting, atmospheric, almost static elaborations on the Zodiac suggest movement, but a movement almost too slow to be perceivable. The dancing was excellent. However, there were times when there was so little activity in the piano part and so much among the dancers that the combination had a jarring effect. Nevertheless, it was a powerful and ambitious effort, and I'd like to see more of this sort of combination take place. 13 percussionists arranged themselves on stage for a splendid performance of Edgar Varèse's classic 5-minute extravaganza for percussion, Ionization. It was conducted by Richard Brown. To close this very long program, Isabel Gans, David Pelton, Paul Schmidt, James Kasperwitz, a choir from Texas Southern University, and a fairly large orchestra performed Jewish Chronicles, a work composed by 5 German composers. The problem with the piece has to do with its 5-way conception as well as the manner in which it was performed. The text is in German. In order to aid comprehension, the text was spoken in English before each segment, then sung in German the way it was written. This made the piece more sluggish and dramatically ineffective than it already was. A better choice would have been to have sung it in English in the first place. Despite my dissatisfaction with the last piece, the producers of some concerts are to be congratulated for their effort and for the excellence of most of the program. Their work is a major contribution to music in Houston and deserves the support of the people of this city.
That was Ellsworth Milburn with his review of the special contemporary music concert last week in Miller Theater. Again, our thanks to Dominique Demenil and Nabila Druby for being with us this evening on the Green Room and sharing with us their experiences with the Rothko Chapel and the Whirling Dervishes of Turkey. Please be with us next week on the Green Room when we have something very special for you. We're going to be coming to you at 7:30 live from Jones Hall on the occasion of the opening of the opera Norma. We will have interviews with the General Director of Houston Grand Opera and other creative and staff people who are making this opera possible. Please be sure to join us next week, 7:30 p.m. on the Green Room for our very special live remote broadcast from Jones Hall celebrating the opening of the opera Norma. Meanwhile, enjoy the arts because they are for you. Good evening.